Hello, viewers, once again. Welcome back to episode 6 of The Social Point. I'm Linus.
I'm Aden.
And I'm Neerav. And before we get into today's topic, how was exams for you guys?
Not too bad for me, I guess. How about you, Linus?
It was alright, quite stressful. I'm glad it's over. But, anyways, viewers, today we're going to be discussing about climate change. So, climate change in general is the change in climate as a result of human induced activities such as increased emissions. Now, one thing that I believe, like, not a lot of people understand about climate change is that climate change and global warming are similar concepts, but is fundamentally different. I know a lot of people, especially back in February during like the snowstorms in Texas, a lot of people are saying like, "Oh, there's a snowstorm. It's so cold outside. How can global warming be occurring when it's so cold?" Well, the truth is, the climate as a whole, like the system, is very complicated and very hard to study. Um, that's why I think climate change is a better word for describing it. Because yes, the average temperature of the globe is rising, but an increased rise in temperature in certain areas can lead to something like disturbed weather patterns that may affect the whole system, which can lead to certain areas being colder than normal and other areas being hotter than normal.
Interesting viewpoint. But then, do you think climate change is the biggest issue we face right now, or are there like other bigger priorities that we should be bring our hands towards?
Well, like they always say, well, if we can't even take care, like if we can't take care of this planet, no matter like who you are, we are all gonna be equally dead if this planet can no longer support us.
But then, because here's the thing that I see. Because statistically, from what I've seen is what a 97% agreement to this climate change consensus. Like it exists, it's a problem. We need to do something about it. But it's just 97%. Where's this other 3% coming from?
Well, we also have people like climate change deniers, one of the most famous ones being Mr. Donald Trump, who once said on Twitter that climate change is a hoax made up by the Chinese to try to stop American economy. And it's really stupid. My brain hurts when I read it. The evidence that is being presented that human activities causing increased emissions and therefore climate change is real. The evidence is overwhelming. We can see from like a lot of data and research from many independent sources, and we can all see a strong correlation between the concentration of CO2 in our atmosphere and the change in global temperature.
So like, but with this anti-science agenda, because where do you think this anti-science agenda comes from? Because you see a lot nowadays, because in the COVID pandemic, not just that, but thing like flat Earth theories, what you said about climate change. Where does it come from? Is it a distrust due to a lack of like you don't believe the government, or is it just being overly ignorant or stubborn? What do you say it is?
Well, a little. I'm not sure because for one, like I really don't see why people wouldn't believe it. But I guess, and this is just theorizing, that maybe a reason people don't want to believe it is maybe it is inconvenient for them, or maybe they just are unable, like they don't want to accept this as a truth because, well, the truth hurts. It's not good. It's unpleasant, and they don't want to feel like they are responsible for something like this, so they'd rather just deny it. But this is just my guess. I don't really know because am I don't know anyone who is actually a climate change denier or like anti-science in general. What about you?
The way I see it, like all these pseudosciences and anti-scientific agenda are really driven by government government mistrust, and I guess there's this notion that government intervention in science for the reason of funding, or like in these capitalist societies, maybe not just capitalist societies, because well, honestly, I don't take global politics, so I can't speak entirely, but when government intervention and science come in hand, I think it's for some people it's said to be a dangerous liaison because people use this as an excuse of a political tool to manipulate science for their own benefit. And given the social climate that we're in right now, a lot of people don't trust government, so they think that, oh, this is just here to push another political agenda, in order for them to win another campaign, win another election, or something like that. So it's this kind of knowledge dispute that is driving a lot of issues. Like when you're rejecting this kind of information, it's like from the person who denies it, they might think that this is we should trust nothing the government says, and we should only believe in our own heart. But then the issue I find with that is it gives you mentally and psychologically, it gives you a lot of excuses to feed on your opinion. Like you know those so-called experts on social media.
Yeah,
Like, you know what I mean when you say, oh, but then I'm sure this is true. I talked with a scientist on it. Or I talked with a biologist about it, but it is just a person they're claiming they have. And these people bow down to scientific objectivity very easily sometimes. So, and they might highlight this inconsistent view of, well, what you could say is established knowledge.
I see. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, I guess most of us that are listening to this podcast will agree that climate change is a very real thing and it threatens like a future of anything that lives on this planet. Oh, I for one actually have witnessed like the effects of climate change firsthand. Um, I remember many years ago, I think it's around 7 years ago, I went to this coral reef in Thailand. I went snorkeling there, and I even have pictures of it. Back then, it was really nice. It really was. There was like a lot of coral, and like the whole ecosystem was really thriving. 2 years ago, I went there again. The scenery has completely changed. There was, I would say, more than half of the coral has been bleached. I can notice that there was like significantly way less fish. There were no more signs of sharks or sea turtles. They were just all wiped out from the reef completely, and it was really sad to watch. Like an ecosystem that was once so pristine and like it was so teeming with life, and completely wiped out by um by the effects of climate change. Because as we all know, like increased ocean temperatures are very bad for coral because the algae that live inside the coral requires very specific temperature range to like live and thrive. And so if you increase the temperature, the algae leaves the coral and the coral loses its color, it loses its food source and dies. And once the reef starts to die, the fish start to leave. And once the fish start to leave, the bigger predatory fish that eat the small fish also leave. And so that's how you completely kill off an entire marine ecosystem like that.
I see. Interesting insight. But then, Nirav, over in India, like on the coastal regions, are there any like nice coral reefs and stuff?
Not that I've seen. India's very like what's the word? Polluted, right? So actually during COVID, there was like this time where they had seen flamingos all around Mumbai for the first time in like years due to like people being in lockdown and no pollution going out, right? So that was the closest they've seen to any like
Yeah.
like a lot of wildlife coming to Mumbai for one.
I would also like to know like what is the attitude on like climate change in like India?
Well, so as I said, it's very polluted, right? So the sky you can't really see much. If you look up, it's just clouds, dark, bright, whatever the occasion, right? The roads are all well, most of them are all dirty, right? You got dust everywhere practically. There's not much, and the water ain't that clean either.
Mm, I could guess, yeah.
Because in India, if you do experience these kind of like climate change deniers or maybe those very anti-science agenda-based people, is it based off their is it based off is there a certain reason for this, or is it just behind their own ego?
Just before mention that, I just want to say like this is in most places in India, not all over. Like there are of course like some amazing places. Just I'm not too sure which ones. And as for that you just asked, I think it's caused mostly because of how like of course like you got the 1.3 billion population in a small not small but like crowded area, right? So there's cars everywhere, um, like letting out CO2 emission and stuff like that. They're all petrol cars. You don't see many. I don't think I've actually seen any electric cars over there, right? So there's not much use of reusable energy sources. It's mostly non-reusable, right? But I think if you were to find some reusable, it would be like maybe uh, just solar panels on some people's roof who are rich enough to afford those.
Personally, I haven't experienced. What have I? I'm pretty sure I have because I remember when I was in sub. Well, it's not climate change as in firsthand affecting the environment as much, but then to me it just reminds me of preserving nature because I remember when I was in Cebu for year 10 camp, it was honestly rather nice because I got to it allowed me to explore like those mangrove areas. We also did snorkeling. You see a lot of interesting wildlife. Like I remember we saw like sea urchins, poisonous starfish. So it was for me it was something I really enjoyed. And I feel it's really a shame to see that we are just slowly just damaging this, and I don't know, for all we know in 50 years this couldn't even be a thing anymore. So maybe this kind of distrust, how do we amend it? How do we like is it weird like cuz when you're talking to someone who denies science or just denies a lot of mainstream agenda, they don't have to agree, but how does one convince or sway their opinion on it?
Well, I don't. I believe like it's very difficult to convince someone whose mind is already set. Um, I've seen like many people, like many discussion threads online of like people, like you could present them with like so much overwhelming data and evidence, and they would still find a way to like argue around it. There's the pseudosciences and like just trying to bend any argument your way has become like such a prevalent thing. It's really difficult to fight back against it, and especially like the more you try to argue with them, the more they like don't want to believe you just because they find like you very annoying, and like they don't want to they don't want to listen to someone who is like not agreeing with them, if that makes any sense.
Okay. Well, to be fair, I understand because people, whenever they are very tuned to their own opinion, it's very hard to get them to change and sway things. So usually my approach is just to talk it out with them, and like reasoning with logic is one way you can do it. But then name calling them isn't going to help the situation because you're only gonna be fueling that flame, so you aren't really gonna be helping anything as far as that goes. And perhaps maybe society needs a bit of a needs a mindset change. Do we? Maybe.
I think society as a whole needs a mindset change.
Oh
And
yeah,
a lot
not
of
just in
people,
climate change.
yeah, a lot of people just think, oh, climate change, hotter summers, milder winters, it's a good thing, right? And
Yeah, it's not as
it's
simple as that.
really it's really not. It affects from like what I know, um like just simply rising temperatures on Earth can like bring about so much like ecological disaster, and it all ends up to bite humans back in the ass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for example, seafood, um with increased temperature, with more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, more carbon dioxide gets dissolved into the sea, and H2O plus CO2 makes carbonic acid, which dissolves the exoskeletons of many of of things like crabs and like shrimps, and and corals as well. So that's why as ocean acidification is such a dangerous thing. Another thing is increased increased temperatures around the Gulf Stream in Mexico disrupts the warm water current that flows up to Europe. This may cause this may cause a drop in regional temperature in Europe and North America, because the warm water that was supposed to like keep the region warm has been disrupted, and now it's not flowing to that area anymore. So these are just like some examples of climate change not being the simple, oh yeah, hotter summers idea that everyone has.
All right. And seeing as we're just about out of time, so I think that's gonna be enough for today. So maybe for next episode bring on a guest speaker. We'll see how that goes. But anyways, be sure to stay tuned for that. And thank you everyone for tuning into this week's Social Point podcast. And we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.